Democrats continue with their outrageous rhetoric, some extreme examples of just how radical the left has become. First up, an Illinois Democratic congressional candidate under fire after comparing President Trump to the mastermind of the September 11th terror attacks.
In many ways, and this is, I don't mean to sound overly, hyperbolic on this, Trump and Osama bin Laden have a tremendous amount in common because they have both figured out how to use the holy pulpit to activate marginalized young men, right? It's the same tool. I mean, every demagogue has done this, right? You find a group of angry people and give them something to be angry at.
Sean Casten's campaign is now backtracking, saying his words were poorly chosen and he regrets them. Meanwhile, an Arizona Democrat is threatening ICE agents. Congressman Ruben Gallego warning government officials conducting so-called illegal deportations that they will not be safe from future punishment when Trump is no longer president. And finally, who needs impeachment? Climate change alarmist Al Gore is saying Trump should just call it quits.
My only message would be resign. I mean, I don't mean to be flippant about it. I think everybody knows to discount what this current administration is doing and saying. They've made the EPA, the CPA, Coal Production Agency.
Juan, you got to help me out here with this insanity. What is going on with Democrats? They're threatening ICE agents. I mean, you got Al Gore coming out as if anyone's going to listen to him. You think Trump's waiting with bated breath to see what Al Gore has to say? Oh, Al Gore said to resign. Yeah, you know what? Let me just step on up and do that. What are they doing? Why not come out with a positive alternative message?
I think there are positive alternative messages, but again, so much news these days is national news. Especially at our level. Everybody follows the national news, and the star of American national news at this point, no surprise to me, Donald Trump. Everything's about him. So you're going to get on the individual message in terms of specific campaigns, Jedediah, you will get messages. And in fact, you see the Democrats pushing heavy on health care, on the immigration front. I can go on. But when it comes to Donald Trump, the reason Donald Trump, I think in today's Washington Post, has a 60% disapproval rating, which is a record high, is that he inspires a great deal of anger, in fact, fear among people on the other side of the political aisle.
But people say, like you're saying, he inspires anger, but then you have these people on the left coming out and comparing him to Osama bin Laden. So, like...
No, that was in terms of his use of rhetoric. And you remember, witch hunt, fake news... I could go on. He's pretty good with language, and he does it in a very manipulative way. In the way that he repeats phrases over again. I mean, last night in Indiana, lock her up. You would think that they were still running the 2016 campaign.
Well, did Osama do any of that?
Yeah, Osama's messages?
No.
Oh, my gosh. You think about white grievance today. Oh, Osama bin Laden was big on grievance for his guys.
I think the rhetoric, I mean, it's across the spectrum. I'm from the Bay Area, and I had someone say to my face that they were glad that the Las Vegas shooting happened to country music fans because maybe then that segment of the population would appreciate gun control measures. And that kind of rhetoric is, let alone from the hypocrisy, I mean, it's absolutely aberrant. And so I think, I'm not excusing that by any means, but I think it's certainly on all sides. And I think Al Gore is the last person, by the way, that should be telling someone to let it go. Hey, Al Gore, give it up. Gore v. Bush. Anyone remember that?
Yeah. What about, Mark, what's interesting to me is that you see them going after Donald Trump right now, but this isn't about Trump. And if Donald Trump did, let's say he woke up one day and did resign or got impeached or whatever, Mike Pence is coming on in next, and he's going to take even more heat, I would argue.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Bush was Hitler. And Trump is Osama bin Laden, and if Mitt Romney had won, he would be Saddam Hussein or Kim Jong-un. It doesn't really matter. I mean, what I do think is that if you're going to do this, you have to have a lighter touch. I mean, that Al Gore joke of the EPA is now the CPA, the Coal Production Agency. That's comedy gold. Greg will be using that on his show.
He steals lines.
That kind of. So, in fact, just like forgetting that and just going straight to the, Trump is Osama bin Laden. And I like a bit of this stuff, but it isn't actually the same. Osama and Trump aren't the same. I mean, it's not true. I mean, maybe they co-produced Miss Universe for a couple of years back in the 90s, and Osama said to Trump, hey, Miss Zionist entity, she's pretty hot this year. But I don't think so. I don't think so. And so I don't feel that they're helpful to your side, just as political sloganeering. To do
Does it work, though, Greg? Does this kind of stuff work where you gin up the base and then you talk about impeachment and you equate the president with... Is it successful? Is that maybe a successful strategy for the midterms?
I don't know. I mean, I just remember, like, it was August 2012, Joe Biden told a diverse crowd that Republicans were going to put you all back in chains.
Oh, yeah.
And now he did a fiery speech this week about civility.
Right.
So I think that people have a short memory about their own sins and offenses. What I've learned from this is we're just running out of evil things to compare Trump to. Why don't you just go to the ultimate evil and compare Donald Trump to Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Like this, Donald Trump is as bad, if not worse, than Donald Trump. He has actually turned the media into little church ladies.
Yeah.
Remember Church Lady from Saturday Night Live? Everything was caused by Satan. Now he's become the Satan. But this is how it works with when you were comparing somebody to bin Laden or you're comparing them to Hitler. It's a flowchart of fascism. First, you demonize the leader, right? You call this figure Trump, you call him Hitler or bin Laden. But then by extension, all the supporters are accessories to evil. That means it's now okay to call his supporters appeasers and so on. And then what that does, that elevates any action, maybe by Antifa, as somewhat heroic because it's a moral act, because these people are evil. And then finally, that encourages violence to suppress their political freedoms. And right now, I believe that we're between step 3 and step 4. We have seen violence by Antifa towards people trying to suppress their political freedoms, their political voice. We're seeing that happen. And this is all, but the first thing you got to do is you got to demonize. You got to demonize, and that's what you're seeing.
That's why the congressman saying to ICE, if you enact Trump's orders, we're going to come after you. That's stage or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. And to your point, you have to bring up the fact that he said, what did he say? It was overly
hyperbolic.
Yeah, that was a great term.
Redundant.
An amazing term.
I have to be precise. And look at what. So you guys remember in the Berkeley protests recently that there were members of Antifa that had their faces covered, and Berkeley PD was taking mugshots of protesters that were arrested for holding weapons and other violent acts, and they posted the mugshots on Twitter, and then they were called out by the left for doxing these protesters. And that's not, you don't get to... It's conflating the protections, and it goes back to what you were saying, which is somehow rendering them heroic for actually, just breaking the law and being thugs when it was actually a First Amendment protected
Wait a second,
protest.
who's breaking the law? You mean if someone is behaving in a violent, aggressive behavior, they're breaking the law?
Yeah.
But there's a distinction to be made that's very important to this conversation, which is that if people are standing up to those who are fascist and people who are
and hitting them with bike locks,
racist, and protesting against them, I think the violence, as I recall, the violence was perpetrated by the people.
You're totally right. The distinction is what you just said, where they were arrested for cause.
No, it was perpetrated by Antifa and protesters who were upset that Trump won. The stuff happened in Portland after the election. Those were not Trump people beating up people. So it came from the left. Look, we just spent a long period of time listening to the media saying how harmful Trump's rhetoric is about the press, that it's going to gin up violence. So where's the media on this stuff? Because this is actually ginning up rhetoric that could also lead to violence to just average Americans who happen to support a president.
But you know, the reality is that there was a real threat against the Boston Globe.
Yes.
You understand that.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
And I'm saying that didn't come from the left, Gregory.
Yeah, but the point is, that was a verbal threat. If you look at the numbers of violent cases against reporters, it's gone down this year and has nothing to do with Trump.
Enemy of the people. Let me
back this up.
Let
me back this up with the evidence. If you look at the incidences of violence against reporters, it's during protests that, quote, turn violent. violent. Right. So they either get hit by rioters or they get hit by anti-rioting agents like rubber bullets and things like that.
I see. That's why reporters at Trump rallies are fearing for their lives.
But it wasn't at Trump rallies. It was at protests.
No, and it's also, if
they
you're
were at protests.
If you're going to care about these things, what's interesting to me is that folks on the left suddenly care about this violence. They suddenly care about extramarital affairs when it comes to presidents. They suddenly care about character and leadership. And it's really interesting to see them suddenly awake. If you're going to care about these things, then you should care about violence that's precipitated on both sides.
Everybody
then you should
does.
care about character on both sides. No, there were people who adamantly defended Bill Clinton for years.
Excuse me,
who are
that's
now
a false equivalence.
That is not a false equivalence. If you're talking about character and integrity.
Listen, are you talking about Stormy?
Hey, we got Facebook Friday coming up.
Because I'm going to tell you, it's about the potential for an FEC violation in terms of his pay. It's not about the sex.